It is week 11 of the 2024 season, and the Cleveland Browns are headed down to the Bayou to take on the New Orleans Saints. Max Nation, I'm Unger to the Max. You've just broken into the Sports Room Talk Show, and to help me preview this game as we take on the New Orleans Saints, I've got TJAY Jones with me. You're from the All About the Saints podcast, if I have that right, correct?
It's the State of the Saints podcast,
That's
man. But
right.
look, we are all about the Saints, though, man.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. Um, like I was saying before we started, I saw the Saints on the schedule and I'm like, where the heck am I going to find the Saints fans? And then
Yeah,
I saw
we're
you
all
on
around, man. Yeah,
and
we're
then
all around. Yeah.
I saw you on Round Table and I'm like, well, there we go. But neither of our teams are doing that well this season, my friend.
Right.
I mean, we're coming off of our bye week, but prior to that, we lost to the LA Chargers 27-10.
Right.
You guys picked up a surprising win last week against the Atlanta Falcons. I know that's a big win for you because you guys hate the Falcons, right?
We do. You know.
Yes.
I mean, the fact the Saints beat the Falcons by a score of 20-17 really does my heart glad. You know, anytime the Saints can beat the Falcons, I mean, that's a plus for me.
I mean, when I think of Saints Falcons, there's only one game that comes to mind, and that's that Steve Gleason blocked punt, I think it was, for the touchdown. When
Right.
In that first game after Katrina and all that. There's a common thread with our two teams, and it's our starting quarterback, Jameis Winston.
Right.
Which I guess you could say there's really two connecting threads, because at one point there was a thought maybe Deshaun Watson was going to get traded from Houston to New Orleans, but we all know he ended up here in Cleveland, and that has been a total disaster for you. But I would say neither of our quarterback situations are really that great, because are you sure Derek Carr is your starting quarterback?
I mean, absolutely not. I mean, look, if you think I'm about to sit up here and lobby for Derek Carr, I mean, that would be a waste of time. Look, I understand what Derek Carr is as a quarterback. I mean, he's a guy that you can win with, but you're not going to win because of. I mean, that's just what it is. And, you know, when you look at this New Orleans Saints team, the way that it's structured, I mean, it's a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of young talent mixed with a bunch of seasoned veterans and some bad contracts. So, I mean, right now, they're kind of going through the motions. The injury bug hit the New Orleans Saints this season, I mean, quite often, and still is. But I do agree with you. I mean, our franchises, they definitely connect. I mean, the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints, the games that they play, I know they normally play every 4 years, but every time they play is always something meaningful happen. It always comes down to the last minute. Like I can remember like growing up as a kid back in, I want to say 98 or 99, when Tim Couch was the quarterback and he threw that Hail Mary in the Superdome with no time on the clock. I can remember, the Cleveland Browns coming in a few years ago, and Antonio Callaway caught that touchdown from Tyrod Taylor, which should have won the game, but your kicker had the yips. And I remember that game where it was below zero a couple of years ago. I call that the Taysom Hill game, where it was a running game where everybody just wanted to keep the clock moving so they could go inside and be warm. So I mean, there are always like those classic games. Cleveland doesn't normally play the Saints often, but when they do, it's always a meaningful matchup, man.
Yeah. I was at the game in 2014 when we beat you in our home opener.
Yeah. That was a shocker right there. I can remember that.
The game that really shocked me, though, was the year after you guys won the Super Bowl and we went into New Orleans and somehow beat you. That was the game where we had I think we had like a fake punt.
Yep.
By the way, even though I'm a diehard Browns fan, I do have that little Saints helmet right there.
Okay.
And there you go.
All right. I appreciate that, man.
You got it.
Yeah.
My dad and I were actually talking about coming to New Orleans for this game.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't quite work out,
Yeah.
but I definitely want to come to a Saints game at some point in the Superdome because when that team is rolling, oh, good luck getting a win in that building.
Yeah.
Because you guys have one of the best home field advantages in the league.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to deny that. But when I look at when I look at you guys right now, you talked about like Derek Carr. Not sure if he's for sure going to be the starting quarterback. Like Spencer Rattler, he had a couple okay games, but nothing that would tell you like, oh yeah, he's our definitive starting quarterback of the future.
Right.
And then, what the heck is Michael Thomas doing? Like on Twitter and all that. I'm sorry to bring this up, but it needs to be mentioned. Like, why? Like, stay over there.
Yeah, look, I mean, Michael Thomas, he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. I mean, he's kind of frustrated. He feels like what happened to him the last game he played, I want to say against the Minnesota Vikings. He felt like, it was one of those passes where could have been avoided, probably could have been placed in a better spot. And I think that his emotional connection to Chris Olave played a role in it. Both of them Ohio State guys. They were teammates. Chris Olave kind of looked at Michael Thomas as more of a mentor. So I think that has something to do with it. And, you don't want to hang your wide receiver out to dry, especially a wide receiver like Chris Olave. I mean, you know what Chris Olave is. I mean, being, in that Ohio area, cheering for the Browns, Ohio State is synonymous with that area. So, I mean, he's a guy that is a big playmaker for the New Orleans Saints, but has had his history with concussions. And, I mean, I was at the game when they played against Carolina, and he was knocked out. I mean, that was a scary scene. I mean, I'm pretty sure some of the things that were happening and transpiring on the field wasn't really being seen on television. Probably went into a commercial break. But you never want to see anything like that, especially when it could have been avoided. But, yeah, as far as Derek Carr, I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Spencer Rattler, I think that was more of the owners trying to appease the fan base because people were clamoring for him, but he wasn't ready for prime time, man. And that was justifiably so. I mean, when you're outmanned and outgunned, and then you have a rookie that's inexperienced going out there with a makeshift offensive line and some backup wide receivers, it's a recipe for disaster. So, I mean, when I look at it, I mean, that wasn't a surprise to me, but I mean, as far as Derek Carr, I think you could have did something else with $150 million, maybe kept Jameis on the books for a couple of years. I mean, at least, I mean, they're about the same, in my opinion, when it comes to guys being at the quarterback position. They're going to win you some games. They're going to lose you some games. But, I think with Jameis, at least he's going to make it exciting for the most part. So,
I mean, he made it exciting for Chargers fans when we put in our last game, throwing like 3 interceptions. But
but he made it exciting for that Ravens game when he threw 3 touchdowns.
that part is true. You're
Exactly.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
That's the Jameis Winston experience right there. I mean, some games he's gonna make you feel good. Next week, like, what the heck are you doing, Jameis?
Yep. We got a couple people in the chat.
Yep.
Who that TJ?
Yeah, shouts out to Wallace, man. Wallace is a avid watcher of the State of the Saints, and Grandizer, he's on there as well, man. Shouts out to those guys.
Yep, Grandizer's a big fan of mine. Yep, we both give it to you straight. Yeah. But I don't know what to make of either of our teams right now. Like, I can't say definitively we're playoff contenders, either one. But I can't say definitively either of us are quote unquote terrible.
Yeah. I agree. Look, I feel like it's a mix, right? I think when I look at the Cleveland Browns, I look at a team that knows what they are, And when I look at the New Orleans Saints, I look at a team that's trying to pretend to be something that they're not. I think when it came to the Cleveland Browns trading Amari Cooper to the Bills, some of the moves that they made, I think they're trying to concede that, this may not be our year. They are a good football team. Defensively, they were one of the top 10 teams in the league when it comes to defense. I want to say they were the number one ranked team in defense, not that far removed. I mean, you had, you had the Myles Garrett as the defensive player of the year. You had Nick Chubb before the injury. He was probably top 3 when it came to running backs. And he's coming back slowly. I mean, you got Jerome Ford too. I like him as well. But I just think that you have some young talent. But this is an opportunity for you to be able to build something, maybe for the future to be able to add on. I mean, there's been some success mixed with some bad luck for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I just think about that.
Bad luck is.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. You were a Chad Henne 13-yard scramble away from being in the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago. So when you look at it,
and
like
a targeting penalty.
Exactly. So I mean, this
Granted,
is a good
you know all about bad calls.
Oh man, terrible. I definitely know about that.
I'm sorry for re-invoking those memories, but this was the referee during that NFC Championship game against the Rams.
Yeah.
I can't see. I can't see.
I don't think he wanted to see, man. I don't think he wanted to see that.
That was the referee, because that was clearly pass interference.
Yeah, it definitely was.
So, but it's just like, I look at trust me, we know all about bad luck here in Cleveland. We're one of 2 teams to go 0-16.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let me ask you this. Being 2-7, Deshaun Watson, he wasn't playing well at all, but he's suffering that Achilles injury. What's been like the vibe, among Cleveland Browns fans since Deshaun Watson has went down? Like, are they looking at Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Do they like the move of Jameis Winston being a starter going forward? Like, what's going on with that?
I mean, we definitely liked the move of Jameis after that Baltimore game. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
After the Chargers game, I would say the Chargers game was more the defense, more just forgetting how to play defense, because there were too many times that game where Quentin Johnson was just left wide open, and some of their other receivers were just, there was nobody in the area, and I'm kind of worried about that going against Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed this game.
Nah, they won't be there. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Rashid Shaheed is out for the season. He had a meniscus surgery.
Never mind.
And they just put Chris Olave on IR because of the concussion. So what you're going up against is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who just recently got picked up after he was released from the Bills. You got Dante Pettis, the former second-round pick, played with the 49ers and kind of been around the league. And you have Kevin Austin, a guy who was playing in the USFL in the spring. So that's what your defense is going up against. Nobody's going to be knocking your socks off here. So this definitely could be a game where you can get yourself back on track. But, I mean, those guys are, they played pretty well against Atlanta. I think it was a little bit of a surprise. So I want to see how they're going to respond now that they actually made some plays and they're going to have a defense's undivided attention.
I think part of the reason you guys played that well against Atlanta is because you got rid of a guy who should not have been your head coach this season at all, Dennis Allen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What did he do to deserve the opportunity to even come back this season as your head coach? I looked at it, I'm like, what? Why?
When you find that out, man, let me know. I mean, I think that he should have been fired after the second season. I can understand like the first season, you still had some Sean Payton layovers. So you have some guys that have to buy in, right? And then you probably have some coaches behind the scenes like, man, I can coach this team better. So I can understand like you move on, try to get yourself your own coaching staff. But that second season, after the last game where he apologized to the Atlanta Falcons after the Saints, blew them out 48-17, and Jameis, did an audible so he can give Jamal Williams a touchdown, his first of the season. I think when he threw his players under the bus, the writing was on the wall. I don't think that was something he can come back from. So to me, he never had real true leadership qualities that you need. And I honestly feel like when it's all said and done, he was the reason why the Saints record is so bad, because those guys didn't want to play for him.
Yeah. Because I look at your defense and I'm like, you got rid of Marshawn Lattimore. Marcus Davenport isn't there, but you still have Cam Jordan. He's still there. You got the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah.
Chase Young is still there, right?
Yeah, Chase Young is still there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have nice pieces on defense. It's not like you're a bad defensive unit by any stretch.
Right.
And yet it felt like a lot of times your defense was falling apart in these games. Maybe I'm wrong, because I haven't watched a lot of the Saints this season. That's why I didn't realize Olave and Shaheed were out.
Yeah. I understand.
Fair.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think that was the reason, Unger, when you think about the team, right? When you think about the defense and all those guys that you just named on the defensive side of the football, and Dennis Allen being a defensive-minded head coach, to me, I think that was more telling than anything, because the reason why he was around was because of how well he coached the defense when he was the defensive coordinator. But now you don't even have that. I mean, why are you still here? So I think that was the biggest question among Saints fans, probably the biggest question among some of those players in the locker room, because once he got fired, I mean, I'm seeing pictures on social media, players walking to work, smiling, happy. They didn't want to play for him, man. And, I think that those games, at least I could say at least about 3 or 4 of those games were like silent protests. They probably could have played harder than they did. They probably wouldn't have won, but they could have played harder than they did over those last couple of weeks. But I just think that when they fired him and now they have an interim coach, Darren Rizzi, he comes in with more fire, more enthusiasm, holding guys accountable. And I think that you've seen the reflection of that in the game versus Atlanta. I guarantee you, if Dennis Allen was the head coach, Unger, at the end of the day, if they played Atlanta, it probably would have been a blowout. Like those guys wouldn't have not wanted to play for Dennis Allen. That's a fact.
So I think that's also part of the reason why you guys won this game, or won that game, I should say.
Right.
And it kind of goes back to why I think we won the game against Baltimore a few weeks ago, is because, like, nobody had film of Jameis Winston in Ken Dorsey's offense here in Cleveland.
Right.
So Baltimore didn't have a lot to prepare for.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing kind of with Atlanta. Like, Atlanta, that was your first matchup against Atlanta this season? Or
No, actually it was the second one.
Okay.
And I definitely agree with you on that. But I do have a question for you. What about Kevin Stefanski? I mean, what's the vibe there? Like, are people calling for a job? What do you think about Kevin Stefanski as the head coach?
So I have not heard a lot of people saying Kevin Stefanski's seat should be getting warm.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard a lot of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Nor do I think he should be on the hot seat. Because you think about it, like, he took a team led by Baker Mayfield and should have had them in the AFC Championship game, as you illustrated earlier.
Right.
Think about this for a second. Last season, he took a team where Deshaun Watson goes down for the year.
Mm-hmm.
He has to rely on quarterbacks like P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Joe Flacco coming off the street. And we still got to the playoffs.
Right.
Granted, we ended up getting blown out by Houston in the wild card.
Right.
But still, like, to take a team like that and get into the playoffs, to me, that says more about Stefanski. But I can understand at the same time why people would be saying maybe Stefanski should be on the hot seat. Like, because I shouldn't say you know this, but like in Cleveland, we have a history of short coaching tenures and short tenures with the general manager and short tenures with the quarterback and all that. It's like it feels like every other year we have a different head coach or a different starting quarterback or a different this or a different that. You guys, on the other hand, you had a long tenure with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and you won a Super Bowl on that. To be fair, and I got a lot of criticism for this. There was a point in time where I was trying to argue that Drew Brees was the GOAT over Tom Brady. Now that discussion is long since dead, but there was a point when Brady was caught up in the cheating scandal and all that. And, I looked at what Brees had done with guys like Reggie Bush and Jeremy Shockey and Marcus Colston. And he led that team to a Super Bowl, and helped a city basically rebuild because that was what, 4 or 5 years after Katrina, something like that.
Yeah, it was like 4 years after that. And I mean, I can understand where you're coming from, and a part of me still feels like Drew Brees needs to be in that GOAT conversation. I think sometimes like we match success in Super Bowls and we give people the notch because of those Super Bowls. But I think that when you think about the magnitude of championships, like to me, like you think about LeBron James out in Cleveland, right?
Yes.
I think that a championship he brought to Cleveland meant more to his legacy than the championships he won in Miami or the one he won in Los Angeles.
I fully agree with that, especially because the championship he won with the Lakers was down in the bubble.
Exactly. It's just like certain championships and who you do it for and who you do it with means more. I think about the Saints being a struggling franchise, a franchise that didn't win a lot of games, like was like a laughingstock among the NFL. Like I'm not one of those fans that don't know or don't talk about some of the hardships of being a Saints fan. I mean, I grew up in the 90s where the Saints were terrible.
And you guys were called the Aints.
Yeah, the Aints, bags on the head. I know where the Saints came from. So when Drew Brees and Sean Payton came along and they brought legitimacy to this organization, to me, I feel like he should get way more credit for being great. Like some of these other quarterbacks, like New England has been to the Super Bowl before. They didn't win it, but they've won with other quarterbacks before in the past. And also, I just think that when it came to like Tom Brady, I'm not going to knock him. I can understand, to me, I can understand why people call him the greatest, but I also think that it contributes, the 7 Super Bowls adds to it. But I mean, football is a team sport. I mean, Adam Vinatieri, you got to think about that. Malcolm Butler, you got to think about that one. I mean, there are several guys that have stepped in and chipped in and made plays along the way. It wasn't like just Tom Brady just dominating Super Bowl year after year. So I think that Drew Brees should definitely be in a conversation for what he did for New Orleans and how people look at the New Orleans Saints as a franchise today.
Yeah. But I know you had asked me before about Kevin Stefanski. Hopefully I did answer your question before I.
No, you did.
Yeah. So I don't think he should be on the hot seat because again, you look at what we had last year. Like we were better off when Deshaun Watson was on the bench. Like. Because it was P.J. Walker that beat the San Francisco 49ers.
Right.
Like, Deshaun Watson goes out with an injury. What happens? P.J. Walker comes in, and he was the one that beat the Indianapolis Colts in that crazy game.
Right.
It was DTR that beat the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
And Joe Flacco won all those games for us. So I don't know what our future is at quarterback. I've seen basically all the mock drafts now have us taking a quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward. I've seen some have it with us taking Jalen Milroe. I haven't seen a lot of mock drafts having you guys take a quarterback, which is a bit surprising to me, because maybe they see the people who construct the mock draft see something in Spencer Rattler that could be your future.
All right. Well, no, I don't think it's that. I think that if you look at the Saints and see some of the glaring holes on the team, you can make an argument to say that quarterback may not be ideal. And then also you have to think about they're contractually obligated to Derek Carr for at least one more year. I mean, if the Saints move on from Derek Carr, it's going to cost them about $50 million. So he's going to be on the team. And, when you get, a top 10 draft pick, you expect for that guy to play right away. And I think that the Saints would need someone, if they are going to be picking in the top 10, if they don't win too many games going forward. I think they're going to need to go with someone that's going to be able to make an immediate impact. Rather it be a wide receiver, wide receiver out of Arizona that everyone's talking about, or some other top wide receiver they can get, or maybe an offensive lineman to add to that group. So I think that's probably what they're looking at. I've seen some mock drafts, and me personally, I feel like if they would have failed to the top 5 right now, I think they're sitting at 7. I would make an argument to say that they may need to go after Shadur Sanders or go after Cam Ward or one of these other quarterbacks. But to me, as far as Cleveland is concerned, if I can give my opinion on that,
go ahead.
I just think that Cleveland just needs some stability at the quarterback position as of right now, because looking at the landscape of the quarterbacks coming out of college to the NFL, I don't see game changing. I don't see franchise altering. I don't see any of that. But I think that Cleveland has some good qualities. They have 2 good running backs, in my opinion. Maybe add another young stud at the wide receiver position, and I think you'll be ready to go. I think, and then next year, who's to say? I mean, maybe, I don't know, you win a couple of games, you find yourself, looking at the playoffs maybe, or maybe, you may take a little bit of a step back. But in 2026, there are better quarterbacks coming out. I mean, you got Arch Manning coming out. You got a couple more young quarterbacks that are going to be playing well. The quarterback out of Nebraska that everybody's talking about, everybody says he's the young Mahomes. So, I mean, there's some quarterbacks that'll be available. To me, this is just not a really good draft. It's kind of like that draft, Malik Willis, and it kind of reminds me of that, where I don't feel like you have too many game changers there.
Yeah. Got a question here from Grandizer. Prior to the 2024 season, what was your prediction for the Saints? And with Coach Allen now gone, how has that record prediction changed?
Well, I had the Saints at the beginning of the season. I had them going 10-7. I thought that the combination of seasoned veterans and, adding a new offensive coordinator and Clint Kubiak may be the thing to get them over the hump. At the time, I don't think I took into account Dennis Allen as the head coach. I thought that I always knew what Dennis Allen was. Dennis Allen is not one of those coaches that is going to elevate the players around him. Like, you got some coaches out there, like you put some average talent out there, they're going to find a way to win. But the
Mike
fact
Tomlin.
something like that. But with Dennis Allen, like, you need like all the ingredients to cook this perfect meal. Like, he's not going to make any substitutions to try to, compensate for something that be missing from the ingredients. So I didn't take into account the injuries that they were going to have. I knew that the Saints were going to be pretty top heavy when it comes to premier positions. But I thought that they would have been able to weather the storm. I didn't think they were going to have so many injuries. But as far as now him being fired, I think guys are going to be playing more motivated. But look, you can take away the coach, but the coach wasn't out there committing those holding penalties. The coaches wasn't out there committing those pass interference calls, missed opportunities, right? So you still are who you are, regardless of who your coach is or not. Now, Darren Rizzi, the new interim coach, is adding a little bit of some enthusiasm and some passion, but enthusiasm and passion only can go so far. So, I mean, your team is what it is at this point. So I would say I can see them winning maybe 2 or 3 more games, win 6 games on a season. To me, based on how everything transpired with the injuries and bad coaching, that's probably your best case scenario.
Yeah. So I actually had you guys be near Carolina's record because I just looked at your roster. I'm like, I see a lot of issues there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take Dennis Allen into account, like as you said, but still, I just looked at the situation. I'm like, where's the offense going to come from with this group? Like, I know you have Alvin Kamara, but I'm like, I kind of compare it to with the Browns. Like, Kamara can't stay on the field because of either health stuff or, stuff off the field, whatever. I'm not getting into all that. Chubb has been injured for the Browns, so kind of the same in that sense.
Right.
And then you have question marks at wide receiver on both sides. Like, right. I like our wide receiving group with Cedric Tillman now and Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy, but like they've been inconsistent all season. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna get from them. Right. And I feel like on the Saints side, you can kind of say the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely can say the same thing. Inconsistency at the wide receiver position, inexperienced guys at the wide receiver position, and you combine the fact that this was their own doing. Like I don't feel sorry for the New Orleans Saints. I don't. They had an opportunity to try to add something to this wide receiver room. They had the off season. They could have got a guy that probably a big body wide receiver that can go alongside Shaheed and Olave to be able to step up in these type of moments, and they didn't. So the Saints kind of done this harm to themselves, and they have no one to blame but themselves. I don't see too many studs out here right now, man. I mean, this team is dealing with injuries. I mean, it's hard to win in a league, even when you have some of the top talent in the league. So you got a bunch of guys that are undrafted, unproven, and it's not going to be easy. But I think that this team is motivated. I think that they are going to go out there to try to do everything that they possibly can. Cleveland, I can understand. I watched a few of the games. I've seen Elijah Moore out there. I mean, Jerry Jeudy. I think they're trying to give him a few more opportunities and targets because Amari Cooper is no longer there.
Right.
I mean, you got and you also got that running game. Like, to me, I just feel like that's going to help you. I think that they need to put more emphasis on the running game. That is going to get Cleveland over the hump when it comes to like dealing with some of these issues when it comes to the quarterback position. And also it takes it out of the hands of Jameis Winston. And if you look at the New Orleans Saints, I mean, their run defense is terrible right now. So, I mean, if Jerome Ford and Nick Chubb can get going, I mean, I can see the Cleveland Browns running the ball and winning this football game pretty decisively if the Saints aren't careful. So, yeah, a lot of question marks with the Saints team, but they have no one to blame but themselves. Point blank, period.
You say that, and yet somehow it feels like when certain teams go against the Browns, they fix their issues because it's
that's how I like the Saints.
Yeah. So it's like, because it's like, oh, this team, they're not very good at running the ball. They play the Browns. They they end up racking up like 300 yards rushing. You're like, oh, so that was their remedy. Just play the Cleveland Browns. There you go. So, or it's like you said, the Saints' run defense is terrible. But watch, Kevin Stefanski is on the first drive of the game. Come out, pass, and you're like, why aren't you running the ball?
Right.
It's like you're playing against the weakness of the Saints, essentially, if you do that. But if you get what I mean.
Right. Well, I can understand why teams want to throw on the New Orleans Saints. I mean, you think about their second round pick, Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's injured. You think about Marshawn Lattimore being traded to the Commanders. You got Alontae Taylor, he started out as an outside corner, but over the last couple of years, the Saints moved him to the nickel. So now he's on the outside. And then you have Shamar Jean-Charles, a guy who was, just kind of off the scrap heap. They got him playing opposite of Alontae Taylor because Paulson Adebo is out for the season. So I can understand why teams would consider throwing a football. And I expect for them to throw the football in this game. The Saints play man coverage. Jameis Winston loves himself some man coverage. He has a lot of confidence in his receivers. So I think this is going to be a feast or famine type game for the Cleveland Browns. Like Jameis Winston is who he is. It might be one of those games where he's putting the ball up. He's trusting the talent out there to make plays, and they might end up making plays. But if he doesn't, he throws the ball up, he might, end up getting 2 or 3 interceptions out there. But I think, to me, if Kevin Stefanski is smart, I would say he put emphasis on the run. Because if you look at that game in the second half, Ungar, against the Atlanta Falcons, they ran a football way more than they did in the first half. And Bijan Robinson, he averaged nearly 6 yards a carry. Tyler Algier, nearly 6 yards a carry. As a group, they were at 5.7 yards a carry. So if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm looking at those analytics, and I'm looking at this team get ran all over. I need to put a little bit more emphasis on the running game. And that sets up the play action. And some of those down the field throws where guys are going to be wide open because the Saints defense has to be susceptible. They're going to be susceptible to the pass because they're trying to, because they ran the ball down their throat. So if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm trying to run the football against the Saints.
Yeah. So I like this question. Grandizer likes to ask it a lot of times when I'm doing these. Which 3 players / position matchups are you watching the most closely in this game?
Which ones am I watching closely?
Yeah.
I would say Myles Garrett versus the rookie Tallahassee Fuaga. Like Tallahassee Fuaga, he's a rookie left tackle out of Oregon State for the New Orleans Saints. He was the number 1 pick for the New Orleans Saints, the first round pick, I should say. And he's been playing well, man. But you're going up against a monster in Myles Garrett, a former Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who has done it at a high level for many years. That would be one of the matchups that I'll be looking forward to. Another one would be Demario Davis versus this running game of Nick Chubb. I want to see that matchup. And number 3 would probably be the wide receivers of the Cleveland Browns going up against the cornerbacks and the safeties of the New Orleans Saints. I want to see how that matchup is going to be. I think that, kind of both are kind of middle of the road. So I think that, each side has an opportunity to have an advantage over the other. The question is which side will reign supreme. So those are the 3 positions that I'm looking forward to in this matchup. What about you, man?
So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was out for that game against the Chargers, which I think played a big role in how well LA was able to play offensively.
Right.
So if he's back, I want to see how that matchup goes between him and Alvin Kamara, because we know this. Your offense kind of goes through Kamara,
right?
And Koramoah has kind of become the backbone, if you will, of the middle of the field for us, especially because Sione Takitaki is no longer with us.
Right.
He went to New England.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be a huge matchup. I'm also looking at your linebackers, not against our running game, but going against David Njoku. Because I'm thinking, based on what you're saying, maybe you want to get Njoku going in this game early.
Yeah.
So seeing how your linebacker crew goes against him and maybe some of our other tight ends if we decide to use them.
Right.
How that happens. And then I'm going to say your secondary against our wide receivers because you were talking about how you have a lot of questions about your secondary, especially because, again, as you illustrate, Marshawn Lattimore got traded to the Washington Commanders,
right?
Which you got a lot of draft picks back in return for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say our wide receiving group is, bad. I wouldn't say they're great. I'd say they're average to very good, somewhere in that range. I'm not sure exactly where I'd put them.
Right.
But it's not like your secondary is this scary unit that I'm like, oh, we shouldn't try passing on them at all.
Right.
So seeing how that matchup plays out is going to be very interesting, I think.
Yeah. And also I want to see how the Saints make the adjustments. I think the biggest issue over the last couple of games has been the Saints' inability to make adjustments going from, the first half to the second half. I think that the first half of this game probably has the potential to be really exciting. Like both sides, like kind of, going toe to toe. I mean, two, pretty, I won't call them terrible, but teams that are struggling right now, two struggling teams trying to figure it out, trying to get a win. I'm interested to see what the second half would have in store. I trust Kevin Stefanski to make adjustments. I don't necessarily trust the New Orleans Saints offensive staff to make those same adjustments. Clint Kubiak has been really good at calling plays in the first half, but in the second half, he has left a lot to be desired, and it's telling. So to me, I just think that it's going to come down to the second half adjustments. It would not surprise me going into the half if this game is tied.
Yeah, it would not surprise me either. Last I saw, the Saints were a 1-point favorite.
Right.
Although Grandizer, I think, said that the line had flipped and now the Browns were favored by 1. And the over-under is 44.5 via DraftKings.
I think it'll be higher.
Yeah. I would actually put that at a bit lower because I just don't know what to make of these two offenses right now. And like I said earlier, I think you guys had a bit of an advantage because Atlanta had seen how your offense operates with Dennis Allen as the head coach. But then this time around, it wasn't Dennis Allen as your head coach, so you were going to come out and play differently. I get it. Kubiak is still your offensive coordinator, but still, I feel like when you make a coaching change, you're going to play differently. Well, now we have a week's worth of film to see how did you play under your interim head coach. Like, did you change things from how you played under Dennis Allen and whatnot?
Yeah. I could agree with that, but I don't think too much of the personality has changed because of the head coach. Now the aggressiveness of the play calling could change, like maybe going for it on fourth down, or maybe in certain circumstances or situations, you'll probably throw the ball instead of run. But when I looked at the New Orleans Saints last week versus the Atlanta Falcons, I didn't see too much of a difference from Dennis Allen being on the sidelines to Darren Rizzi being on the sidelines, to be truthful. And that was alarming to me, especially when I was checking out the second half. Like the first half, I was like, okay, they're doing something. You're seeing explosive plays down the field. You're seeing Derek Carr trying to test the down the field game of the Atlanta Falcons, trying to test their secondary. You're seeing them trying to become a little bit creative, implementing Taysom Hill into the offense. You went from that to in the second half, you barely even seen Taysom Hill. You didn't really see too many downfield passes. So I want to see how they're going to make these adjustments. I think that if they can't make the adjustments, the Cleveland Browns might win this game comfortably. But I think the first half is probably going to give us some fireworks and have us looking forward to the second half. And that's why I really want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's interesting you say you think the Browns are going to win this game comfortably. I can't allow myself to think that way because the Browns have just given me too many times where I'm like, yeah, we should win this game by double digits or by at least a touchdown, and they make it a lot closer than it should be.
Well, I don't want to say they're going to win comfortably. I was saying, like, if the Saints don't make the necessary halftime adjustments,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Then they could possibly win this game comfortably. I still feel. I still feel like the New Orleans Saints are going to lose this football game because, to me, I think that Cleveland. I think Cleveland is a lot better than people give them credit for. Sometimes it's just not your year, or it's plagued with bad luck or some unfortunate circumstances. To me, I think that the Cleveland Browns organization, this is just my personal opinion.
Sure.
I feel like the Cleveland Browns organization, their stubbornness is the reason why Cleveland is in this position. And honestly, I feel like the stubbornness of the Saints are the reason why they're in this position. If they would have moved on from Deshaun Watson, it was clear. I mean, the offense wasn't moving, wasn't scoring too many points, low third down conversion rates. I mean, when you see that type of stuff, you have to make a change. But Kevin Stefanski, his hand was tied. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Haslett probably, wanted to have a guy who he paid $250 million to, of guaranteed money, to be out there playing. So that's what I feel. I feel like these two organizations' stubbornness is the reason why they're in this position. Not so much about the players. I think in a different level of circumstances, another alternate universe, both of these teams would be successful if they got their ownership out of the way and they put their pride to the side and realized that, hey, this didn't work out. We just got to cut our losses. This is what happens when you have two organizations that just refuse to get out of their own way and call a spade and cut their losses and move on.
Yeah. Trust me, we know all about that. There have been plenty of times where the Browns have tried to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it hasn't worked. Like, there have been quarterbacks we brought in that I'm like, okay, that could work. Like, when we drafted Colt McCoy out of Texas all those years ago, I was like, okay, I like this. Like, I know what happened in the national championship against Alabama, but I saw what he did, on tape throughout his career at Texas. And I'm like, okay, I like him. But we tried to put him into an offense that didn't work to his skill set. And that's one of my biggest issues with the Browns is so many times, whether it's Jake Delhomme or Seneca Wallace, Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon. Good God, I can't even believe I'm mentioning this, but Johnny Manziel even. You get my point, though, is like they draft all these quarterbacks, and it's like, no, we're not designing the offense to fit your skill set. You are going to just be in our offense no matter what. Like, I think that's part of the reason why you guys had so much success when you had Sean Payton and Drew Brees together, is because Sean looked at what Drew Brees could do, and he's like, okay, let me go get players that fit what he can do. Let's design an offense that fits what he can do. And you turned it into years of success. Winning the division, number one seed in the NFC. Drew Brees with breaking all types of passing records. A Super Bowl,
Yeah. I think that both. It's so funny that you're mentioning this. It's just how parallel these organizations are, because you think about it.
Yeah.
Both situations that have set both of these teams back, basically your hand got forced. Like, you think about, people wanted Deshaun Watson to get benched. And Kevin Stefanski, week after week after week, was like, he's our quarterback. He's our quarterback. He's our quarterback. Until faith happens and he tears his Achilles, and now you have no choice but to go away from him. And, now it's like, okay, Jameis comes in, he provides a spark against Baltimore. People seem like they start to get behind him. It seemed like the offense was kind of clicking. Guys seemed like they were motivated to play. And then, you look at the New Orleans Saints, it's the same thing, except it was with a head coach. Everybody knew what the issue was. It was the head coach. People wanted the head coach gone until they lose to the lowly Carolina Panthers. And now you have no choice but to concede that this guy isn't everything you want him to be. And you combine the fact that you had a fan base that wanted blood. I mean, it forced their hands. So it's the stubbornness of these organizations that has set these teams back. I mean, I just can't like turn a blind eye to that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like, you just got to cut your losses and try to figure out some things that work. You mentioned, it makes no sense drafting a quarterback if you're not going to try to build an offense around them. It's just not going, like, you're not going to have success. You're not going to do it. You're going to find yourself in the same situation. So until, these two organizations figure it out and get out of their own way, we're going to have some hardships, some ups and downs, more downs than ups. And, but they're going to have to figure this thing out if they want to be successful going forward.
Yeah. Like, let's say, for example, you guys do draft Cam Ward in the upcoming draft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you just going to force him into the offense Kubiak runs? That's probably not going to work for him. Like,
nope.
You should look at what he did well this season at Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Probably don't look at the Georgia Tech game, but
no.
but you get my point, though.
I got you.
Look at what he did well and be like, okay, this is what he does well. This is what he doesn't do well. How do we design our offense to fit that? Do we need to make some changes? Like, I would keep Shaheed and Olave, even though they have injury history. I get it, but they're still solid receivers when they're on the field.
Yeah. I think on top of having two athletic, speedy guys, but they're kind of like on the smaller side. I think that you need
somebody like a DK.
Yeah, like a DK Metcalf or Mike Evans, or someone that's got a little size with them that can get those yards after the catch, get those contested catches that those 50-50 balls. I feel like that's something that this offense needs. You add that, maybe it will kind of fix your misfortunes offensively, for you to have some levels of offensive success.
Yeah. Well, if you got nothing else, do you want to just go to the score predictions?
Yeah. I think that now, if you would have asked me like before this whole Dennis Allen debacle happened, I probably would have said that the Saints, I probably would have said the Browns would have won, but I just think that the Saints are probably going to win this football game. I think that the home field advantage is going to play a role. I think their knowledge of Jameis Winston might play a role in this game. I do think that Cleveland is going to be formidable, but I think it's going to come down to maybe a field goal. So I have the Saints winning this football game by 3 points. Probably going to be maybe 33-30 or something like that. I think that it's probably going to be like one of those games.
So I have it being a lot lower scoring than you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you this. Even though I'm a Browns fan and I built my channel a lot on Cleveland sports and the Browns,
mm-hmm.
I'm not always going to pick the Browns. If I don't think they're going to win a game, I'm not picking them to. And
right. Same way.
I picked against them a lot this season, and rightfully so. And I just look at this and I'm like, yeah, we're coming off the bye week. But I look at the way you guys played last week. You fired Dennis Allen. You're at home. I kind of want to pick the Saints here. So I'll go with the Saints 21-17.
Okay.
Little bit lower scoring.
Mm-hmm.
I just have concerns about our offense and their inability to stay on the field, because that's been one of our biggest problems. Is it's just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, which means the defense has to keep going back out onto the field.
Right.
And you can only leave your defense out on the field for a number of times before the dam just breaks.
Yeah. I mean, same way though. I mean, honestly, the things that you're saying, like you can be the host of the State of the Saints and everybody, like you can be talking about the Browns and nobody would know the difference. Like some of the same issues, like how you talk about how, you know, those players on the team, like it seems like they're the get right team, offense getting in their own way, you know, not being able to make necessary stops, turning the ball over. I mean, they're basically mirrors of one another when it comes to that. So, like I said, it should be an interesting game. I think it's going to come down to, I think it's going to come down to a final possession and maybe a game-winning field goal. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I really do.
Yeah. I should be able to watch most of this game. I'll be coming back from Pittsburgh on Sunday.
Okay.
So, but I should be able to catch most of this game.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if you're live streaming, I'll try and jump in while you're there.
Yeah.
Maybe give some opponent banter or whatever.
Okay. But, yeah. I normally go live like in the second half. Like I recently I've been going live in the second half, like towards until the end of the game.
Okay.
And then I do my post game. I do post game on Bleacher Report, and then after Bleacher Report, I go to the State of the Saints podcast to give the post game commentary there. So, yeah, I definitely will be talking about the game, breaking the game down. And if you're not doing anything, you got some time, make sure that you pass by, man. We'll be glad to have you over there.
You got it. Well, if you got nothing else, then I want to thank you for jumping in and previewing this matchup with me, and you helped me get one step closer to finally achieving my goal of doing a video collab for every game on the Browns schedule. I haven't done it up to this point yet because of various stuff, so this is my best opportunity, so thank you for helping me with that. And we'll be talking again when the Browns play the Saints, I think in 27, I think that is. Yeah.
Play every four seasons. So yeah, man, definitely. Like, man, even when they don't, I mean, like I love to collab with you and talk to you about the Cleveland Browns or the AFC North teams out there. I mean, I'm pretty well rounded when it comes to sports.
All right.
And, I just love football. I love NFL football, and I appreciate it, man. Thank you for that. Like I mentioned off air, man. I mean, you could have chosen anybody else to do this. There are several great Saints podcasters out there, so it's humbling, man, that you chose me to do this. And I appreciate it, Ungar. Anytime you need me, man, just let me know. I'll be here for you.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right, man. You take care.
You as well.